Erickson. Each week, we bring in two new guests. We sit them down on Hendo's couch, and we find out why they do what they do. And this week, as always, no exception, we have a pair of really, really diverse and super talented songwriters. We have Zaritza, and we have Jay Monday. But first, and as always, my large adult son, Chris Dubrow.
Mr. Erickson, how are you doing, sir?
I'm all right, man.
How you feeling?
Right. Yeah, it's Monday. Like, what can you do?
Yeah, it's Monday. Garfield hates it.
Yeah,
that's all the stereotypes about Monday that I got.
That's
it.
That's it.
Actually, we're talking about the song. Do you know the song Manic Monday is like that?
By the Bangles?
Yeah.
Yes.
Apparently, first of all, written by Prince. According to
Really?
research we did at my job today. That's how bored I was at work today.
Okay.
And
You get paid for that, right?
yeah, no, I get paid to
Okay.
look up who wrote Bangles songs.
Okay.
That's my entire job. No, written by Prince, and also one of the most depressing songs I think I've ever heard in my lifetime. This
Yeah.
is continuing our trend of talking about old pop culture at the top of every episode. I like that. We're talking about the Bangles.
Yeah. We need to really. We're gonna, now that this is part of the ongoing conversation.
We're
We're
have
just
to
gonna
bring it
get
back.
deeper.
That Glenn Miller
deeper
guy, let me tell
every
you,
week, yeah.
he knows how to play a clarinet.
Yeah, he's-
I took jazz in college, intro to jazz, so I
Did
know
you
that
really?
Glenn Miller. I took it was like a history class, so I learned a lot about the scoobop doodly bops and the bebop wee bops. It was a good time for me.
I had a Reader's Digest 11 LP, like the big band era.
Ooh, how was that?
Set. Kind of.
Were you in the mood?
Sounding.
Yeah, I imagine.
Very crackly.
Did it get you in the mood though? Da 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 da. I don't know how that melody
It
goes.
did. It did.
Have you ever seen the
I
Ken?
can play that song on saxophone.
Can you really?
Yeah.
Can you play saxophone?
Yeah, I can.
That I did not know.
very well, but
How long have you been playing saxophone for?
Since I was like 9.
That's so cool.
Right?
I've always wanted to. They Might Be Giants. Every now and then, one of the guys plays a bass saxophone.
One
like
of the Johns.
One of the Johns, yes.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to, like in the middle of a song, stop playing bass and just start
get
playing
a
the bass
bass
line on
saxophone.
like a bass clarinet or a bass saxophone. Just like make it like explode. I think that'd be so funny.
That would, and then it would be funnier still if you got yourself like a little a sopranino, which is one of the
little baby
the
ones.
not a soprano saxophone,
Yeah.
not like Kenny G, but it's a sopranino's probably about as big as.
Yeah,
this.
it's what Garth Hudson plays on It Makes No
Yes,
Difference from The Last
yes,
Waltz, which
yes.
is hands down the best moment of The Last Waltz. Again, us talking about old pop culture.
Yeah, I
Always comes back around.
I did like the Staples singers.
Yeah,
doing the weight.
but the thing was, like, that was filmed after. Like, for me, like, the Last Waltz concert, the
Oh, the
best moment
concert
is when...
itself.
Have you ever heard the
Or
original
actually,
recording?
I liked the. Oh well, this is during the
Yes.
documentary part when Rick Danko is listening to "Sip the Wine," and the camera kind of zooms in on him. You know that he knows that his career is basically.
For me, the definition of that movie, and also most of, like, what happened to the band post the band, is just the phrase cocaine sheen. Like, they are all so glistening with cocaine sweat the entirety of that concert. Yeah. Robbie Robertson, like, that man was permanently on coke. We got obsessed, my best friend and I. Have you ever seen the music videos from his solo album, right?
No.
Oh, man.
I haven't.
There's a music video. Audience, look this up. Somewhere Down the Crazy River by Robbie Robertson is like the most insane music video you ever see in your lifetime.
Yeah,
it's
make sure, you guys just make sure you go. You
pause this.
Look that up.
Come back next week. Next week we're not gonna have any performances by the artist. We're just gonna show
We're
that.
We're gonna talk about the video.
We're gonna do the Great Albums podcast on just that song.
Oh wow, we're converging two worlds.
Everything's coming together.
Excellent.
For me to prove that it's a very funny song by a very good artist.
Yeah, who I don't know, his solo album's not a huge fan.
It's not, it is what it is. I think he was trying to be like a little more of a rock star than I think he actually was.
I think more of a rock star than he was capable
Yeah,
of.
I mean, there's a reason that he's not singing any of the songs on the albums, you know?
Yes. He did sing one.
He sings on We Can Talk on Music from Big Pink.
Yes.
But even then, like, there's everyone singing on that song. They're all yelling.
Yeah.
Is it We Can Talk? No.
It's the second song.
Yeah, right? We'll have our researchers look into this, and I'll get answers.
Track 2. Side 1, track 2 of
which
Music from Big Pink.
Cannot for the life of me. Oh, Kingdom Come. To Kingdom Come. That's the name of the song. There we go. We did it.
Yes.
We did it. We got there.
Great song.
Thank you guys so much for sticking along with us while we went through that moment.
This is the second time we've talked about the band.
I mean, that's how we always talk about. It's like that's the band to talk about here.
Yeah, and we haven't had that many episodes with the two of us though, so the ratio of talking about the band to not talking about the band is
it's that
is
and
pretty
Weezer
robust.
basically.
Yeah. Well,
Speaking of bands,
yeah,
I gave you that segue.
We're gonna bring on our first guest from the band Dirty and Tight-Lipped, Jay Monday.
Hey.
What's going on, man?
What's up, guys?
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Make yourself at home.
It's an intimate couch.
That
It is very homey.
That is something that you've got on right there.
Yeah.
Who are you wearing?
This is me. Believe it or not.
No, I absolutely believe it.
Yeah.
What this chain that cheetah? Where does one
Yeah.
procure this?
I think I stole this from my ex-girlfriend. Hi.
That's okay. I could see that. You know,
Yeah.
things getting stolen from exes
you know,
is a good way to acquire jewelry.
When you're in charge of clearing everything out, I think you
Take liberties.
It's like a tax, really.
just
It's
some-
like a
there's
tax.
just some things
like
I didn't see it. You know.
Okay.
It was there, maybe.
But it wasn't. What was there?
I found it
What was
later.
there? Okay.
It was
Alright.
too late. It's
But,
mine.
well, it looks wonderful, and it
Thanks.
goes really well. Like the coordination.
Yeah.
This was clearly like a really well thought out.
Yeah. Maybe, sort of,
outfit.
kind of. Yeah.
But it's perfect. This is real like rock and roll.
Yes. Yeah. I like fashion, and I like bands that look like bands. You know.
Okay.
And I feel like there's a little bit of a lacking in that these days. So I just I like a lot of glam stuff. And,
Like what?
I mean everything from David Bowie and T-Rex and
Because I mean, this says like Lower East Side, like 1977.
yeah, love Johnny Thunders, New
Okay.
York Dolls.
Yeah.
And then obviously coming out of the 70s into the 80s, you know, there was Motley Crue and the whole glam rock hair metal thing, and I took to that as well. So yeah, you know, I always liked punk rock, and I always liked any kind of rock and roll that had a look to it, and I think
Who was what kind of got like what band or who was it? What put that on your radar? Because I mean, I'm sure that like 5-year-old Jay,
right.
wasn't wearing leopard print pants
Let's see.
to kindergarten.
Let's
So
see,
when
where did
did
it
this all start?
So first band that I guess you could say caught my attention in rock and roll that put some image into what they did was obviously Kiss. You know, for a lot of kids that were into rock and roll, they kind of started it. You know, there was makeup and there was fire and spitting blood and everything else. And I think that kind of
Actual blood too.
yeah, and I think that got me interested in the theatrical side of being an entertainer, really young, and but I was always a little strange compared to the norm as far as how I dressed or what I was into. I had very cool parents that got me into all different types of rock and roll and didn't censor me from that. So I was getting Marilyn Manson records when they were coming out in the 90s
nice.
and things like that, who also took kind of a shock slash glam element there and put it together with his music. And
You remember the first record or the first couple records that you bought?
Mhm.
Or at least, maybe if you had parents help you out, like the first records that you picked out.
Yeah, I remember the first CD I ever bought with my own money was Green Day Dookie, and
Okay.
And I was young, and there was things coming out that I was just being exposed to, but the first record that I had, playing in my room, singing along in a little plug-in microphone was the first Motley Crue record,
Oh, wow.
Too Fast for Love, and that was really what got me started as far as my roots and where I ended up going back to with my writing as far as where I'm at now. You know what I mean? That's really my roots and things that got me got me started as far as style and genre and things like that. So for sure, you know, I was all over the map, and I still am. You know, I love punk, I love rock and roll, I like old metal, I like, you know, I like rap. You know,
Okay.
I like anything, but yeah, those stand out to me the most for sure as far as early days are concerned. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Now, the bands that you are and have been a part of have all shared that kind of same sensibility. I mean, you were in a band that's not together anymore called Girl. Now, you know, Dirty is on hiatus, right? Kind of, or they're kind of like taking a
Yeah,
break.
we'll call it hiatus for now. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
And now, you know, Tight-Lipped, and it's, you know, you look at these bands and it kind of, they all seem to have that that old like punk and rock and roll sensibility. Is
For sure,
that
yeah.
just kind of meeting of the minds? Is that a sensibility that you feel you bring to the groups that you are a part of?
I think basically what happened was I played in played in a couple bands growing up. One of them was way more punk with pop elements, kind of like classic punk though. Very, very The Clash, very Replacements. You know.
Cool. Oh, I love the Replacements.
From there, I moved on to a grunge band, and that kind of was the last band that I did that was other people's writing, as far as like just playing my role. And then I kind of broke off, and I started J Monday, and that was supposed to be just really honing in on my writing and being the primary writer and the primary visionary of what I was doing. And that's when it started to really kind of go in that direction, where I incorporated everything from being working class and being into music that was a little heavier, but was also real, and it was also, you know, genuine. And I think the other elements just I kind of brought along the way. And right now, Tight-Lipped, my lead singer, Joy, she always kind of walked parallels, and we kind of always were like this, and we finally kind of crossed, and Dirty went on hiatus, and she had a couple members leave, and I think that it was just the right timing to kind of Frankenstein it together.
I was going to say, yeah, because you're not an original member of,
This is true.
Of that.
Of Tight-Lipped, right.
That's, yeah, of Tight-Lipped. They were, they were a trio at first, right?
Yeah.
When did you join, and when did you join, and how did it change after you kind of came on board? Because they still seem like a fairly new band. I wasn't able, like, I kind of did, you know, some quick research. I found one recording from the Brighton bar.
They're certainly new, yeah. So Joy had a band called TV Tramps. And that was, I think, pretty much going on during my earlier projects, earlier forms of Dirty, which were, you know, Champagne Black and Cheap Cigarettes and bands like that. And I guess she put together Tight-Lipped. I'm assuming somewhere around the time as I put together Dirty. And the way it went was, you know, we lost members around the same time, and it just seemed like a perfect match as far as, like, she's definitely a writer that connects with how I feel about music and my vision for things and style and those things. And my drummer Grady and I have always kind of been on that same wavelength. So when we weren't going to do something that was ours and specifically our vision for how we want to do things, we obviously were going to do something that had to make sense for us, you know. And I think that it finally just kind of came about that somebody, you know, who needed us and needed members around the same time we were available happened to be doing something that kind of walked that same line. You know, it's a little bit more punk as far as
it's really gritty
style.
Though, and like
it's very like New York 70s style punk rock and roll, and it has a lot of elements. There's a garage thing. People have said there's a surf rock feel.
Okay, yeah, I can hear that a little bit.
Obviously, you know, bring a lot of glam element to it and just rock and roll in general, and I think it just kind of I think when you put me and Grady into the mix, I think it just dirties it up, no matter who the band is. You know, if you put us into the mix, we're going to bring what we bring to the table, you know, and
Okay.
I think that...
and that's something that
yeah,
whatever project you guys are coming into sort of needs to expect.
sure, sure.
Because
I
yeah,
think-
I'm sure you know, just your standard kind of surf trio
Right.
isn't gonna expect you guys to kind of come in and just kind of play that clean tone.
Right. No, we definitely we wear our influences, and we wear you know, the idea of being a rock and roll band, you know, loudly, and I think you know, we don't hesitate to put that out there, whether it's style or lyrics or at our shows. I think you know, we're trying to do something that's a little bit more a little ballsier and a little kicked up, and just not so safe. I feel like rock and roll has gotten very manufactured and safe, and I think what I was going for and what I see Joy is going for as well, and the reason it worked out was we're trying to put that little element back into rock and roll that we feel is definitely missing for sure.
Yeah, I feel like because there's a lot of, you know, I think where rock and roll is at, if I could offer an opinion,
Sure,
is,
absolutely.
you know, say 20 years ago, you know, people talk about like Weezer, Nirvana, or, you know, Soundgarden or whomever. You know, these are bands that are, you know, they're playing rock music, but they're also selling records by like the boatload.
Right.
Bands like that still exist. Bands that are, I would argue, similarly like innovative and, you know, accessible in their own way.
Sure.
You just kind of have to dig for them.
Right.
But I would, this is, you know, where the opinion comes in. I feel like rock and roll has lost its element of, for lack of a better word, maybe like danger, you know,
Yeah.
because if you go through different time periods, I mean,
Sure.
Elvis was dangerous.
Sure. You know, you
at
couldn't
varying times. The
shaking
Rolling
your hips
Stones
back
and the
then,
Beatles
you know,
were
you were the devil,
dangerous,
yeah.
and you know, you could kind of go on throughout the decades. You know,
Right.
to Zeppelin, Prince, like I said, Nirvana, like stuff that, you know, Guns N' Roses, like stuff that parents wouldn't necessarily.
Right. Who's out now that, you know, a kid's parents wouldn't want them to have their CD? You know what I mean?
I don't know who.
Like, I mean, there's rap artists, I think that.
Well, yeah, I think maybe that's
that
kind
maybe,
of gone into different
genres for sure.
yeah, different genres.
There's not really too much rock and roll out there where, you know, they're really pushing those boundaries. And I would never encourage anybody to do that if it wasn't them, if it was fake. You know what I mean? If it was a gimmick or just part of an image. But I think that's the problem, is you're not seeing a lot of people, you know, just living that lifestyle, as far as like just being a bunch of kids that get together and they roll around like they're, you know, they're a gang. You know what I mean? They're brothers or sisters or whatever. And I think that when you live together and you hang out together and you write together and you do everything together, I think you get this pack element, and it's just like, you know, it's us against the world, and we're just going to do it. And I think it's become a little bit too much like a second job for kids, and I noticed that with members that have been in our bands, and when I just see bands on stage, you know, they look like they either have the look and they don't move around, or they're
Or they look like they just came off work.
Yeah, but then have a great show presence. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I always say the '90s were the most necessary era of music, but I think now it's time to kind of, you know, go
'Cause,
back a
I mean,
little
that was
further
20 years
and-
ago now.
Sure.
So
yeah, and when you look at the late '80s, I think there was a reason that the '90s had to happen, as far as stripping some of the ego and the image and the look
without a
away from
doubt.
it. You know, I think that was very necessary. But I think now we're in a time where we could use something a little different and a little exciting. You know, and I think that there needs to be some danger, and there needs to be some balls, and there needs to be something that, you know, people aren't afraid to say. You know, and I think we need a spokesman for that, and I try to
maybe
do
that
yeah.
that can be you.
Yeah, sure.
And
I'd
we're
like to
gonna-
be one of them. Yeah.
And we're gonna hear a couple of those songs in just a little while.
Awesome.
So
Awesome,
thanks
yeah.
for being here.
Hey,
Jake.
thanks, guys. Yeah, I
Appreciate
appreciate it. Cheers.
Stop bumming.
Thanks.
Hey, Bart. One More Brian Erickson is brought to you by Mr. Pizza Slice, a Red Bank institution with a new vibe. For 45 years, Steve operated Mr. Pizza Slice on Monmouth Street in Red Bank. Matt, can I get some pizza? The new owners have 100% kept the original pizza called
Where's
Steve's
Rochelle?
Original Pie. I have no idea. None of our pizza gatherers are here.
Where's Jesse? Where's Lindsay? Where are these
Where's
people that
everybody?
are bringing the pizza?
That's like my whole thing. Okay, where was I? They have 100% kept the original pizza called Steve's Original Pie. Thank you, Matt. As well as the signature Italian hot dogs, of course, my nickname for Brian.
Of course.
And French fries, Brian's nickname for me. Don't ask. We were in Amsterdam. New additions include pizza with various toppings that can be ordered by the slice, hot and cold sandwiches, and smaller appetizer dishes. My nickname for Bart. They have kept Steve's original feeling here, the classic video game machines, and added delivery service, longer hours, and Sunday hours. Mr. Pizza Slice. It's pizza. By the slice. That's not their slogan. Brian?
Let's bring out Zaritza.
I don't know what to do with this. I'm going to leave that there again.
Oh,
Where's it gone?
I don't think. Hey, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. This is like freaking me out here. Like,
Is the pizza making you uncomfortable?
A little bit. Like I don't think Leno just kept a slice of pizza on his desk.
Well, there's a lot of things that,
At least
Leno
not
didn't do that
did
we're
and
doing.
didn't do. Yes. Anyway, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get right into it. So what was it like to, because you've been in the United States, you come from Russia, and you've been in the United States for 12 years.
A little bit more now, 14.
Oh, 14
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so we're gonna fire that intern then, who gave me the wrong information. What was it like growing up, kind of toward the end of like the Soviet era in Russia? Like you were probably pretty small, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because probably my most significant memory of collapse of Soviet Union was, you know how we used to wear those uniforms. Like if you had to go to school, you would have to wear like a little thing that indicates like you were the communist kind of a regime, and it was a uniform, like a brown uniform that I had to do for like a couple of grades. My biggest memory of this that I didn't have to do it when it collapsed. They said free, and so because that was the probably something that I resented as a first second grade, and finally I had the freedom to dress up actually the way I always wanted to. So that was my probably biggest memory of what I remember. But then a couple of things. I mean, like in the stores, things have changed. I mean, there was a lot of chaos in the first probably mid-90s,
Sure.
which kind of reflected artistically, musically, everything that was happening. So if you watch like some of the Russian movies or listen to Russian music, it's got probably the darker tones than anything else before and after. So they definitely call it transitional phase. And as a child, I think I didn't have as much problems or kind of negativity about it. My parents definitely did, because
I'm
there
sure,
were a lot.
Yeah,
and
they lived
in the Middle Age.
that whole time.
And for them, they had to, anything that they had to like study Marx and communist, and suddenly they're like, okay, it's a kind of, we're gonna be capitalistic society, which really didn't happen, but that's kind of what
but
it
that's
was.
a whole other conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But I understand too. Your dad brought bootlegs of classic rock music into the house.
It was available in some places, but some of the things that we wanted to hear, like I remember Queen was one of the first records that he brought, and it was really hard to get.
For your music, which is kind of, has those sort of classical elements to them.
Yeah, it was probably one of my biggest like theatrical inspirations of what I wanted to do, and I remember it was pretty hard to get in some of the local towns, also because I lived in a smaller town. Some of the bigger cities maybe had a little bit of more access. He always told me, like the first time the Beatles were heard, they had to literally spend a lot of money on getting those records. And when I was there, it was a little bit easier, but still you had to go through certain contexts to get. And right in mid-90s, that was actually some of the changes too. A lot of records were suddenly available, so I've heard Madonna, that was the biggest 90s, Russian.
And I think didn't Paul McCartney also go over there and play a concert at somewhere around that time, like late '80s, early '90s, and that was a pretty big deal. Like
Paul
you did.
McCartney or was it Billy Joel?
It was both.
I remember the Billy Joel concert.
Well, yeah,
He yelled a bunch at one of them.
Yeah, during Sometimes a Fantasy,
which is the best song to freak out to.
Yeah, but yeah, Billy Joel. Because what they were doing though was Billy Joel was performing and they were shining the spotlight on the fans who were dancing and who were getting like too excited, and they were pulling them out of the audience for, I guess, being too expressive. And Billy Joel was yelling at, not at the audience. He was saying, stop, stop messing with the audience.
Yeah, in between lyrics, he's like, "Let me do my show." That's a classic.
Yeah,
that's like one of the best onstage meltdowns.
I
sidetracked.
No, I never actually seen that. That would be interesting to see. I mean, I know they did play.
Yeah.
It was 80s, you said? Or?
I think late 80s, maybe
yeah.
88, something like that. And then, maybe around that time, maybe a few, 2 years after or so,
okay.
Paul came through. But I guess as this was all happening, as, I guess we saw, Western artists start to, physically make their way in there.
I mean, I know there were some controversial concerts, when Madonna performed and some other things. So a lot of pop stars started happening in 90s. But I mean, it's I'm curious to see that actually the 80s. So it's the end of 80s. So it's like
I'll find it. I'll send it to you.
Send me the link. I'm curious to watch that.
Now, when did classical music come into the picture for you?
Well, it's always been. It's like as I remember myself walking, I started dancing. It was ballet and classical. It was like the necessities of Russian education that time. So I think I started playing around 6, around 6 or 7, and then stayed through my teenage years and until later.
And you were influenced by a very specific Russian composer who also moved to the United States.
Yeah, you did
right?
your research.
A little bit.
Yeah, it was a Navysink area. I actually accidentally found this. I've always been a fan of Rachmaninoff, and I do remember precisely in his biography, he immigrated right after revolution happened. He immigrated first to Europe, Switzerland, then he came to New York and then Los Angeles. So I never knew really he had other residences except for New York and Los Angeles. So when I started doing some research more, actually I was such a big fan, I even went to his grave in New York. There was like a huge cemetery. I can't remember the name, but it was like upstate New York. And so when I went there, so I kind of started doing a little bit of research, and I accidentally found he had a summer residence, only for 2 summers or maybe 1, in Navysink. And so he had some Russian big names that time to come over, and they were having blast apparently. So
I'm sure.
And so that kind of was an interesting connection.
He was pretty famous too in his own, in his own time. This was not a composer who died and then got. Was made famous afterward. Like he was pretty well known in his own, in his day. So I'm sure he.
It's funny because he was first mainly famous for being a piano player because he was extraordinary piano player. Then he started writing a lot of.
He had that reach too with that.
Yeah, he was huge. I don't know what's the inches, but 2 meters, almost 2 meters. I don't know how. Probably I would imagine 6'5" or something.
6'5", something like
and
that.
He had this
Chris, you're an expert in the metric system.
Yes, of course, I'm an expert in all that. You'd think that maybe we would stop using this weird unit of measurement
Feet
that we've
and
invented.
inches.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Isn't America literally the only country, right? Does the inches, this,
They tried to convert in the early 90s, and it was a disaster because I don't know if you noticed, Americans don't like change. We like things. I don't know if you noticed.
No, I didn't think. I thought we were okay with
Yeah.
change.
It's all about the change in this country.
Well, I think so.
Well, yeah, I don't do well with inches and some other things.
That's
but
okay.
I do kilos and.
So he could be. So he was over
of
6
an
feet.
indeterminate type, which we assume is very big.
So everything he wrote was mainly because of his huge hands. So I remember as a child I was playing, so I had to reduce this, skip some notes because it's almost unfair because it sounded beautiful, but he definitely had ability to reach over an octave and things like that. So that was inspirational, but torturous for me to do as a 13, 14-year-old trying for the first time.
Now, when did it occur to you that you would want to write your own music and eventually record it?
Well, I think I started writing. I always wrote some melodies, so I always had that compositional kind of element to myself. When I started playing classical, I always played on the side some melodies and tried to write. My whole idea was to write for movies. That was like, I wanted to become a composer for movies. And maybe in my teenage years, I think maybe everybody can relate to going through hormonal, challenging times, and you start writing all this, rebellious poetry, and so all this stuff probably started happening at 16, 17, and I never taken vocal lessons by then. So I kind of like, something comes up more in the form of pop songs, because I was already by then inspired a lot of, pop music and rock and a lot of British, specifically music, and some, of course, American influences too, but a lot of British. So I started getting to, I think, Radiohead, maybe later in life, but started listening to a lot of those things.
Well,
and
you have talk show host on your album.
I do, yes, I do. I thought maybe it would be quite appropriate to
You going to play that for us today,
I
too?
will, yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so that would be, it's one of my favorite songs by Radiohead.
Now, when you cover a band like Radiohead, it's like priority number one is you can't mess that up.
Priority number one is don't do Creep. Priority number two is
okay,
don't mess
yes,
it up.
don't do Creep. Yes, and
Yeah.
then don't mess it up because Radiohead is one of those bands where they're just so prevalent and
I know.
people love them so much that you can't mess it up. Like you have. No, I'm not saying like don't mess
it
up.
up.
But no, I mean you have to find a way to do it in a way that's going to get someone who listens to Radiohead and may comment on it. You kind of have to do it in such a way that's gonna, at the very least, get them to say okay, and then at most, kind of get them excited about a new interpretation of a song like that. And what do you put into your choice of covers that you feel makes it your own?
Well, I think to me, it's always about personal connection, just in general. Like, it doesn't have to be some of my favorite bands. I mean, it happens to be like Nirvana, for example, Heart Shaped Box I cover in my record too.
Another one.
I never really listened to Nirvana. I've listened to some songs by Nirvana, but it's never been my huge influence. But there's something about that song always kind of clicked with me in a way that I just, I kept singing over and over. And what happens, I think, with me specifically, I'd really try to make it my own. Like my idea, if you're really trying to cover songs, especially something famous like that, any famous band, you really want to try to put your own
Nirvana's
recipe.
another one that is very, very tough to cover for similar reasons.
Yeah, and I think it's just you have to make it your own. I mean, I don't see the reason, it's fun to play it as it is, of course, but if you really, especially trying to put it in the record and perform it, I always try to put my own little twist on, to things, and I think that's at least leaves the judgmental part, like, oh, if she covers Radiohead, she better not, she's not as good with this or that. So at least I kind of make my own interpretation of the song.
Now, speaking of your record, the first single, Rocket Girl, came out in 2016, and your record came out, about a year later, give or take. How long did it take from, day one, walk into the studio to, I've got the album in my hand? Like, how long was that process?
I think I started writing songs, as you mentioned. You definitely know even my biography better than myself. So 2016.
Well, we're quizzing. We're quizzing.
Yeah,
here,
so I guess I started doing this. Overall, it took. I mean, some of the songs, like one of the songs I'm gonna play, "Burn to Me" today.
I really like that one too.
I know, this is why I thought that was one of your favorites. I wrote more than 5-6 years ago. So there's a couple of songs I included, like Rocket Girl and Burn to Me, I wrote a while ago. And the rest of the album literally just happened probably within a year. So when I released Rocket Girl, I was writing a lot of new stuff, and I was working with one of the guys. So we just did a lot of like programming, arrangements, and so a lot of things happened within the year. But I think overall album took 2 years, probably fairly to say. So including some of the cover songs that something just happened like last minute. You tend to like sometimes I tend to get some of the
Yeah, you
perfectionism
kind of
ways.
sit on the ideas.
Yeah,
for a
you like you
while
sit on
and-
this and like, okay, you listen back 2 months, 3 months later, and
Yeah.
so I had to like really kind of push myself to the point like you can't do this, like you have to finish the album. So I put a little date by the summer, last summer, like
Okay.
by the end of
Deadline
August.
never hurts.
Yeah, so and I think I kind of accelerate a lot of some of my last songs happened a lot faster. The first songs were always like you stretch and you review, do it
Yeah,
again,
of
another
course.
mix, like mix number 10. I was like, okay.
You know, but then I guess by the time you get to some of those, the songs that you record, later on, you've also by then I think got a feel for the studio. You've got a feel for the other musicians in the room and how everybody works. So
Yeah.
I imagine they would probably come together a little easier.
Yeah, and for me, it's also because it was my first produced album. Like I've never really produced anything before. So I've had some solo recordings, just more like a demo, playing piano
Yeah,
and singing.
yeah.
So that was a new experience. So that's why I think it took me a lot longer than I expected, because I was learning as I was going into the process. Because I was co-producing a lot of music myself, so
Yeah.
that was a new thing and exciting. I guess too exciting sometimes, because then you keep reviewing things.
I know, and you kind of go back. Now, when you produce this record, there's a lot of kind of electronic elements, and I guess what came first? Was it did you write these particular songs with the idea that they were going to have those electronic elements to them, or was that just a function of, hey, we're in a studio, we have access to all this other stuff, so let's see how this sounds with these different textures on them?
I think majority of the songs still were written as me playing piano
Okay.
and singing. So I had 80% of the songs written just as like a rough demo of doing that. A couple of songs came, like I wanted to do something different because it's always my comfort zone. I'm writing myself. This is kind of like I like playing piano and singing. So a couple of songs, because I wanted to try to explore more an electronic scene. So that would be something that we created the drums first, or put some
Okay.
synth parts, and then you kind of evolve on that. But majority still probably comes to just writing piano first, and a lot of times it's mainly writing music, then adding the vocals. And especially for me as English as a second language, that took a lot longer than I expected.
I'm sure that process takes
Yeah.
longer than.
And that's like a frustration, because eventually if you become, I'm not a bilingual, but I guess at this point I do speak two languages.
I think you seem to speak fine English.
I'm more used to speaking English at this point. So I couldn't really write Russian and I couldn't write English. And so I had to kind of like train my brain to just be in English at that point. So, so a lot of the poetry was coming. A lot of my friends laugh at me. They think I'm writing like in Russlish. I mix it up. Like
Yeah.
it's like weird, like a thing you write like English and then you rhyme with Russian.
I see, yeah.
So I was doing a lot of that. And I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. So it took me a while to really form my English poetry, I guess, in English, And then, so that was probably the longest part of the record.
It certainly paid off, because it resulted in an excellent record, and we're going to
thank
hear a
you.
couple songs from that record
Thank
in a
you
few
so
minutes.
much.
Thanks so much for being
Thank
here.
you for having me. Thanks.
All right, take it away, Chris.
One More with Brian Erickson is brought to you live from Mammoth Music in Red Bank. Established in 1987, Mammoth Music is located at the center of historic Red Bank, New Jersey, voted third best town in the United States by Smithsonian Magazine. Number one is Stanton, Virginia, lovely town. We're located within walking distance of the famed Count Basie Theater, Red Bank train station, and many fine eateries, including Mr. Pizza Slice. Mammoth Music continues a tradition of being a destination store for all levels of musicians, both beginner and professional. New owner, Mario. Hey, Mario. I love doing that. A lifelong musician offers a wide selection of brand name instruments at everyday low prices, both new and used, with personal, professional, and expert service only a family-owned and operated store can provide. Does the neck on your guitar or banjo need repairing? Mine does. Does the valves in your saxophone need to be refitted? Brian needs it for his apparently solo saxophone performance of In the Mood by Glenn Miller. Regardless of what day it is besides Sunday, bring your instrument to Mount Music for quality repairs. You'll enjoy prompt service from a team of repairmen who are always available. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Zaritza.
Take it one. All right. Gotta go, guys.
Go to the police standby.
morning will come and find me. I've been waiting with the gun and the pack of sandwiches and nothing. 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 You want me? Well, come and break the door down. You want me? Fucking come and break the door down. I'm ready. Ready. I'm ready. I'm Thank you. Thank you. Alive, but no feeling. Awake, but no breathing. Awaiting the dawning when all my ghosts are dying. A hole in my bedroom, the cold of a memory. The phone rings from nowhere. No one begins to speak. I want you straight into hell. I want you all to myself. No one can ever be yours. Burn into me. Your lines are all fading. Done praying and waiting for you to see through me. Baby, I'm done believing. No angels are flying to wake up the lying, to darken your doorway. When your day will come, I want you straight into hell. I want you all to myself. No one can ever be yours. Burn into me. becoming a part of me, becoming a part of you, becoming a part of me. Thank you so much, guys.
Oh, wasn't that so good? All right, this week in events. Tuesday, March 27th, Poets Anonymous returns to the Old Franklin Schoolhouse in Metuchen at 8 p.m. Joe Billy is a featured performer at Meatballs and Brews Open Mic Night in Rahway. Sign-ups start at 8. Try the meatballs while you're there. Maybe try the brews, too. We're not your boss. The Chubby Pickle Open Mic, hosted by Cranston Dean at the Chubby Pickle in Highlands. It's hosted by Cranston Dean. They have alcohol. What more do you need? Wednesday, March 28th, Teenage Halloween is at the Asbury Park Brewery with Michael Jordan Touchdown Pass, Nana Griswold, Loam Loads, and Secret Mountain at 7 p.m. Our very own Brian Erickson hosts the Vaughns, Brian Molnar, Corey and Kara, and Devin Moore. Love you, Devin, at the Asbury Hotel at 8 p.m. Remember Jones is doing Mad Dogs and Englishmen at the Brooklyn Bowl. We don't need to advertise that. Go to that. That's drop your jaw. Thursday, March 29th, Blushed, The Values, Flamingo Chicks, and Overwinter at the Barbary in Philadelphia at 7 p.m. Justin Pope and the Swiss Guard make their debut at John and Peters in New Hope, PA at 9 p.m. And of course, Thursday nights, the Inkwell Open Mic hosted by next week's guests, Matt Fernicola and Avery Mandeville at the Inkwell. You know, the fucking Inkwell. Friday, March 30th, the Brian Hansen Band, Joshua Van Ness, Emiko, and Tori, I believe, are playing Pino's Gift Box in Highland Park. Shout out to Melissa for sending me that one. Crossroads and Garland is hosting the Close Talkers, who will be playing 22 covers and 2 originals across 2 sets. They're supported by the Frank Pimobo Band and McGroover. Sorry, Frank. It all starts at 8 p.m. The Firefoxes are at FM Lounge in Jersey City at 9 p.m. Jeff Linden, the Black Spot Society, the Hell Yeah Babies, my band, The Burns, the High School Superstar, and Leads are at the Looker Store in New Brunswick. Ask a Punk. It's a basement. That begins at 9, I think. Jake Tavel and Joe Marie are at the Chubby Pickle. Saturday, March 31st. That's when the Brian Hansen Band is at Pino's. Excuse me. Matty Carlock and Earhart are at the Danny Clinch Gallery in Asbury Park, along with Low Light. In between shows, they're on tour with the Pretenders. Music starts at 1 p.m. The Marina in Oceanport hosts the Appy Brothers at 7 p.m. Waxwave, Miko Brando, who may have broken our couch, are at Kung Fu Necktie in Philadelphia at 6 p.m. Kate dressed up in Foxanne are at the Loft in Philadelphia at 7:30 p.m. Message Kate for the address. Tell her I said hi. Waiting on Mongos at the Chubby Pickle at 10 p.m. Zach Rusak and John Surratt, God, I love you, John. Joe Surratt, love you, Joe. Hope I got that right. Are live at the Glen Ridge Station in Glen Ridge, New Jersey. Former guest Bob Macon hosts the Macon Waves anniversary party at the Wonder Bar from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. Freebies, drink specials, and a whole bunch of local bands, including Leeds, the Van Saders, Nalani and Serena, and Deal Casino. The first 100 paid entrants get a free TV. Get a free t-shirt. Donate to Ferns Indiegogo. And ladies and gentlemen, J Monday.
And on one.
All good? All right. This one's called Thinking Bad Things. Baby, I saw you cross the room. Baby, I want you. Don't care if it's too soon. Baby, I caught your eye again. Keep looking at me. I just might come in. 'Cause every time you're around in those tears, I can't dismiss it the way I
I feel. When you throw on that devil's dress, driving me crazy, thinking bad things, yeah, I must confess. Baby, you told me, ain't telling me no lies, but I saw you making all the young boys cry. Baby, you got me paralyzed. Well, I got the stinger that'll hypnotize your eyes. 'Cause every time you're around in those hills, I can't dismiss, yeah, the way I feel. When you throw on that devil's dress, driving me crazy, thinking bad things, yeah, I must confess. I can't dismiss, yeah, the way I feel. When you throw on that devil's dress, driving me crazy, thinking bad things, yeah, I must confess. It's called The Voice Inside. need to know. Let me see behind your stare. Give me something, start to show. Why can't I look beneath? Bring me into the unknown. Drive me down your hidden streets. Take me to your secrets, love. Open up and cling to me. 'Cause I'm trying to hold on dearly. Then convince you not to feel me. Yeah, I'm trying to get you, dearest. How will you ever hear this when I'm the voice that's inside? Yeah, I'm the voice in my own head. Yeah, I'm the choice to stay alive. Is your choice a choice to be dead? Can you ever understand me? And will you ever let me in? Is it okay to trust you? Am I the only one within? Are you keeping things locked up? Do you need that for you? Could you ever die for someone who's already died for you? Take me to your secrets, love. Open up and cling to me. 'Cause I'm trying to hold on dearly. Then convince you not to fear me. Yeah, I'm trying to get you, dearest. How will you ever hear this? 'Cause I'm the voice that's inside. Yeah, I'm the voice in my own head. And I'm the choice to stay alive. Is your choice a choice to be dead? Trying to hold on dearly, then convince you not to feel me. Yeah, I'm trying to get you, dearest. How will you ever hear this when I'm the voice that's inside? I'm the voice in my own head. And I'm the choice to stay alive. Is your choice a choice to be dead? It's so lonely, it's so lonely to be dead. it's so lonely. It's so lonely in my head. Cheers, man. Thanks.
Thank you. Jay Monday, Zaritza, Chris Dubrow, from everyone here at Monmouth Music, I have been, and I remain Brian Erickson. This has been One More. See you next week.